The Void Within. Chapter 4, Inheritance of Shadows. Vivian's fingers tightened around the old necklace now resting in her palm. Thin gold, delicate, with a single obsidian serpent charm coiled protectively around a pearl. A Creed heirloom, a curse in disguise. She hadn't looked at it in years. The soft chime it made as it dangled brought her back to that night, 26 years ago. The storm had been ruthless, the rain smearing streaks of shadow and light across the windshield as she drove. Omari, barely a toddler, had cried himself to sleep in the back seat, his small body cocooned in a blanket she'd packed in haste. Vivian's heart pounded harder than the rain. Her knuckles were white around the steering wheel. She could still hear the chants, those awful droning voices echoing through the Creed estate. The ritual chamber below the manor had been ancient, carved from stone older than memory. It was where she had found her twin brother, Vernon, bound and drugged, surrounded by robed figures. Ambrosia's voice had risen above them all, commanding, cold, inhuman. Vivian had been frozen in the doorway, just long enough to see the ceremonial dagger raised above Vernon's chest. She screamed. No one had heard her, or they had, and they didn't care. She ran. No one had seen her take Omari, not yet. She had found him asleep in the children's quarters, unaware of the horror beneath their feet. Her hands shook as she lifted him, careful not to wake him, already whispering apologies into his ear. They weren't just running from Ambrosia. They were fleeing the void, an entity whispered about in dark family history, in blood rites and serpent dreams. Vivian didn't believe it then, not fully. But something had happened that night. Something shifted. She remembered Vernon's eyes opening just before the dagger fell, glowing, not with fear, with something ancient, something wrong. She had sworn never to speak of it again. Vivian blinked, the present snapping back like a slap. The necklace sat cold in her hand. She closed her fingers around it, pressed it to her heart, and whispered, "I'm sorry, Vernon. I couldn't save you, but I saved him." A tear escaped despite her will. She had married Nolan Carter soon after fleeing, hyphenated her name, and built a life far from the blood-soaked legacy of the Creed line. But it had never left her, not truly. Now Omari was back in the same city, back near Ambrosia, and worse, Cairo was caught in the middle, with no idea of the family he'd been born into. She found her resolve. She would do what she had always done, protect her sons. Present. Vivian's penthouse. Vivian stood in her penthouse bathroom, staring at herself in the mirror. The face that stared back was elegant, composed, but the eyes told another story. Weary, guarded, tired of pretending the past was dead. She held the delicate gold serpent pendant in her palm, cool and silent, its eyes like twin obsidian stones. She hadn't worn it in years, but she carried it with her, always. Some legacies were harder to kill. The Creed blood still lived in her veins, and it refused to be forgotten. She turned from the mirror and crossed the marble floor, padding barefoot to the living room. The city stretched beyond the glass, lights shimmering like distant fires. Below, the world moved on, unaware of the cult that thrived in boardrooms and behind closed doors. The Paragon Collective had always been more than a company. It was a covenant, an inheritance built on sacrifice and secrecy. Vivian had tried to carve out a different life, a quieter one. For years she had succeeded, but the shadows had returned. She stopped at her bar, pouring a glass of deep red wine. The color reminded her too much of the robes, the rituals, the altar no one spoke of, but everyone remembered. She brought the glass to her lips and drank, slowly, deliberately, as if the wine could drown memory. Her phone buzzed on the counter. "Ambrosia, we need to talk. Bring your truth and your respect. You owe me both." Vivian stared at the message for a long moment. Her hand tightened around the stem of the glass. Truth? Ambrosia wouldn't know truth if it bled at her feet. Respect? That was buried with the man they took from her. She took another sip, bitter now. Nolan, his name came unbidden. a knife beneath her ribs. He had been the only man who truly saw her, not the heiress, not the survivor, just Vivian, and they had taken him too. The pendant still sat in her hand, its gold coils pressing into her skin, a token from the woman who called herself mother, a curse she hadn't yet broken. Vivian crossed the room, opened the drawer beneath her bookshelf, and placed the necklace inside, closing it softly as if sealing away a ghost. Then she turned to the glass wall once more. The city offered no answers, only choices. Omari was back. Cairo was vulnerable, and the Paragon Collective was moving again. Vivian's grip on the wine glass steadied. Her reflection in the window stared back, no longer weary, no longer afraid, just resolved. Not this time. Later, private lounge inside Paragon Tower. The private lounge hadn't changed in 20 years. Same stone-inlaid floors, same curved glass wall overlooking the city skyline, same scent of white jasmine drifting from hidden vents. Clean, cold, curated, just like the woman who ruled it. Vivian entered without flinching. Her heels clicked across the marble, echoing in the stillness. She wore a navy silk, tailored to perfection, her hair pinned like armor. The necklace lay tucked beneath her blouse, cool against her chest, a reminder of the past she swore she'd never kneel to again. Across the room, someone stood near the bar, silhouetted by the twilight. "You're late," said a voice unhurried, like silk ribbon unfurling. Ambrosia turned, eyes glinting with something sharp and unreadable. Timeless as ever, cloaked in emerald, a pearl brooch shaped like a serpent pinned at her collar. "You look well," she added, sipping from a porcelain cup. "Considering the weight you carry," Vivian didn't flinch. "I came for answers, not compliments." She remained standing at the low table. Ambrosia sat, of course she did. "You knew Omari was back. You led him here." A smile tugged at the older woman's lips. "Led? No, child. I merely opened a door. He walked through it himself." "Child." The word still burned. "I warned you," Vivian said. "If you ever reached for him." "You destroy everything," Ambrosia finished, setting down her cup. "Yes, I remember. I also remember when you begged me for protection, and I gave it. Gave you everything." The unspoken accusation hung in the air like a blade. "You overestimate your influence," she continued. "You think hiding him gave him freedom? It gave him silence, absence, a hollow lineage." She leaned forward, voice dipped in honey. "You created the void in him, not me." Vivian's eyes darkened. "I saved him, from you, from this place, from us." Silence thickened, old wounds reopened. "There was always fire in you," Ambrosia said at last, tilting her head. "That's why I chose you to carry the next vessel. You forget how honored you were." Vivian stepped back, disgust flashing across her face. "That child was never your vessel for the void. He was mine." The smile faltered, just slightly. Ambrosia rose, resting one ringed hand on the edge of the table. "Then, let's speak plainly. He's no longer yours. He's a man now, and he's here. That's what matters." Her throat tightened. Omari didn't know the truth, not all of it, not yet. "If you so much as touch Cairo." "I don't harm family," came the soft reply. Vivian scoffed. "You have no idea what that word means." Both women stood now. Neither moved a beat. "You've forgotten your place," Ambrosia said, voice barely above a whisper. "But you'll remember soon enough." Vivian turned before another word could leave her lips, fury simmering just beneath her skin. She walked out with her head high and her spine straight. Inside, she was unraveling. The elevator doors closed with a quiet hiss, but the pressure in her chest didn't ease. Her heels echoed across the marble of the Paragon lobby, aglow with soft golden light and minimalist opulence. Polished columns rose like sentinels. The receptionist didn't look up, the guards did. always watching. She kept her pace steady, turned down a side corridor, empty, dim, and finally leaned against the cool wall out of sight. Only then did she exhale. Her fingers found the serpent pendant beneath her blouse, now warm against her skin. The memory of Ambrosia's voice clung to her like smoke. He's no longer yours. She swallowed hard, suppressing the ache in her throat. There was no room for tears. Not here, not again. Adjusting her blazer, she gathered herself and walked toward the parking garage. She didn't look back. She didn't see the flicker of movement in the shadows behind the far column. A Paragon employee paused, watching, then walked away. Moments later, in the Paragon Tower atrium. A chance encounter, the executive wing of the Paragon Collective was cloaked in the usual hush of early morning. Vivian stepped in through the discreet employee entrance, moving past security with a clipped nod. She moved with purpose, head high, face unreadable, but her nerves prickled beneath the surface. As she neared the expansive atrium, the scent of polished marble and lavender-scented air diffusers hit her, too clean, too controlled. She adjusted the files in her arms, eyes scanning ahead. "Hey, morning, Mr. Rhodes." Her pulse froze. Vivian stepped back swiftly, blending into the side corridor that overlooked the atrium through sleek glass partitions, hidden just enough. There he was. Omari. He stood by the massive sculpture centerpiece, sleek obsidian carved into a twisting flame, tall, imposing, wearing a fitted charcoal suit that framed his frame like armor. His dreadlocks were pulled back, his jaw set like a man halfway between defense and decision. He nodded politely at the woman greeting him, someone from the executive liaison team. He didn't see her. Vivian's chest tightened. There was no mistaking the shape of his brow, the arch of his cheekbones. Her son. She pressed a hand to the glass, breathing shallowly. Not yet. Not like this. She lingered only a moment longer, then turned and retreated toward the back hallway, her heels muffled against the pristine floor. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the building, Omari, re-entry into Paragon. The doors of the Paragon Collective loomed like the gates of a temple. Inside, the air was chilled, just past comfort, like walking into a sanctuary that didn't welcome heat. Every step across the polished marble echoed faintly beneath soft ambient music. Flute-like tones, barely audible, but unmistakably ritualistic in rhythm. Ambrosia awaited him near the elevators, draped in an elegant slate-gray coat that shimmered subtly under the recessed lighting. Her smile was thin. "Welcome home," she said. Omari didn't reply. They ascended in silence, glass panels offering a slow-moving panorama of the city below. As they reached the upper floors, the architecture changed, less glass and steel, more stone and carved wood, ancient in aesthetic, more deliberate. "The founders of Paragon," Ambrosia said as they passed a grand portrait gallery lining the corridor, "were all women, visionaries, oracles. Each of them bore the mark of divine purpose." Omari's eyes moved over the oil-painted faces, women with unreadable expressions, dressed in various forms of ceremonial garb. Their gazes followed him, silent, studying. He said nothing. Two employees passed them, speaking in hushed voices. They fell silent as soon as they saw him, offering a nod before vanishing through a black glass security door with no label. "What do they do?" he asked, uneasy. "Security," Ambrosia replied, her tone clipped and final. They reached his office. The door was thick, old-world oak with burnished bronze handles. When Omari stepped in, he froze. The space was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city like a throne room perched above the world. A mahogany desk stood before an abstract stone sculpture. An entire wall had built-in shelves filled with rare books and curious relics, some ancient, some oddly modern, some serpent-shaped. The lighting was soft gold, diffused from hidden sources in the ceiling. The carpet underfoot was rich crimson, woven with an intricate Ouroboros pattern. It was not a workspace. It was a sanctum. Omari blinked. This is... He trailed off, throat dry. Ambrosia stepped beside him, surveying the room with pride. Nothing but the best for my grandson. Her voice held a triumphant undertone, equal parts warmth and possession. Omari nodded stiffly but didn't sit. Something about the room, about the whole floor, made him feel watched. Revered, expected. On the far wall, above a minimalist sideboard, hung a polished brass plaque engraved with ancient script. He couldn't read it. Yet it stirred something beneath his skin. I'll leave you to get settled, Ambrosia said, stepping back from the threshold of Omari's office. Her tone was calm, but her eyes sparkled with something far less benign. Acclimate yourself. This is your future now. Omari nodded, though unease coiled in his stomach like smoke. He still hadn't sat down, the door shut with a whisper, muffling the ambient hum of the tower. Ambrosia's heels clicked down the corridor as she returned to her office, dark, serene, and fragrant with jasmine incense. She moved behind her desk, fingers brushing over a carved onyx phone. She pressed a single button. A line clicked open. Omari, she said sweetly, voice wrapping around the name like velvet. Darling, I know you have only just gotten in, but I have a little favor to ask. Think of it as an initiation errand. On the other end, Omari hesitated. Sure, what is it? There's a document I need retrieved from the archives, she purred. Subsection 12, Office 47-D. That wing is shared with our legal consultants, including the head of legacy law. Vivian Creed-Carter, silence. Vivian Creed-Carter? Ambrosia's smile grew, though no one could see it. Yes, it's in her quadrant, just a few doors down from her suite. Don't be shy, Omari. Sometimes fate needs a little spice. She hung up without waiting for his reply. Then, without missing a beat, she buzzed her assistant. Get Cairo from the lobby, she instructed. He should be arriving from school shortly. Take him to his mother's office. Tell her I insisted. The assistant's voice came through, wary. And if she refuses, she won't. Ambrosia's voice was low, absolute. Not when it's me asking, elsewhere, the silence of polished glass and judgment. Vivian's office, legal wing. Vivian was reviewing case files, her fingers gliding over documents without seeing them. Her mind was still a battlefield. The memory of seeing Omari earlier that day had left her shaken. A knock broke the tension. Ms. Carter, said a junior assistant, poking his head in. Ambrosia sent Cairo up to see you. He's just outside. Vivian stood immediately, the name alone slicing through her carefully layered calm. Send him in. Seconds later, Cairo entered, backpack slung over one shoulder, a smoothie in hand, still in his school uniform. Hey, Mom. She offered, a strained smile. Hey, baby, what's going on? Ambrosia said I should check in with you here today. Said she needed to talk to both of us soon. Kinda weird, huh? Vivian's stomach turned. Ambrosia didn't do anything without purpose. She turned to close the door just as footsteps echoed down the hall, sharp, familiar. No. Vivian's breath caught as Omari turned the corner, brows furrowed, holding a slip of paper with directions in one hand. He stopped cold at the sight of her. She mirrored him, freezing as if caught in a dream that had twisted into a nightmare. Omari's voice was hoarse. You. Vivian couldn't speak. Cairo looked between them, confused. Wait. You two know each other? Neither adult answered. Vivian found her voice first. What are you doing here? Omari's expression hardened. She sent me. Ambrosia. Said there was something I needed to pick up. Thought I'd meet someone while I was here. His eyes flicked to Cairo. Vivian stepped between them instinctively. Cairo, go wait outside. No, he said, eyes wide. What's going on? How do you know him? Vivian hesitated too long, Omari's lips curled bitterly. Why don't you tell him, Vivian? Or should I? Cairo looked at her, betrayal blooming in his young face. Mom? Vivian's hand trembled. Cairo, this is Omari. He's my brother, Omari finished. The words didn't just land, they detonated. Cairo dropped his smoothie. Vivian's heart shattered. The smoothie hit the floor with a dull splatter, its contents bleeding across the tile. Cairo didn't flinch. His wide eyes were locked on Omari, then flicked to Vivian as if waiting for her to deny it. To laugh and say it was all some kind of misunderstanding, but her silence, trembling, pained, said everything. My what? Cairo's voice cracked. He's my what? Vivian took a step forward. Cairo, I was going to tell you, When? Cairo's voice echoed off the high ceiling. When I turned 18? When it didn't matter anymore? Omari stood rigid, jaw clenched, but his gaze never left Vivian. So it's true, he said bitterly. All of it. I had my reasons, she said, forcing the words past the tightness in her throat. You were just a baby. I was trying to protect you both. By lying, Cairo snapped. She turned to him, eyes full of guilt. It was never meant to hurt you. But it did, he said, voice quieter now, but no less cutting. It hurts now. Omari looked at Cairo, really looked. The resemblance was undeniable in that moment. Same fire in their expressions. Same pain simmering just beneath the surface. He softened, just slightly. I didn't know either, Omari said. Not until yesterday. Cairo shook his head, pacing now. This doesn't make any sense. You were just a guy I met at Paragon. Ambrosia introduced us like strangers. Vivian's mouth twisted. She knew exactly what she was doing. He turned back to Vivian, voice tightening again. Tell me something. Why me and Cairo? Why does Ambrosia treat us like heirs to whatever this place really is? Vivian's expression changed, guarded now, silent. I'm not asking for a fairy tale, Omari said, but I need to know what I'm standing in the middle of. She opened her mouth, closed it again. Her hands trembled as she reached for a chair to steady herself. I'm not ready, she admitted, barely audible. Then why drag me here? Omari asked, gesturing to the room. Why now? I didn't. Ambrosia did, Cairo said slowly, the realization settling over him. She set this up. They all stood still, the air thick with betrayal, confusion and unspoken truths. Then Cairo backed away. I can't deal with this right now, he said, his voice trembling. I need space. Cairo. Vivian reached out, but he turned and walked away, shoulders stiff. The door clicked shut behind him. Vivian stood motionless, hands still suspended in the air. I never wanted this, she whispered. Omari gave a hollow laugh. Welcome to the club. He didn't wait for more. From the 49th floor, Ambrosia Creed stood in front of the towering window in her office, hands clasped behind her back, watching the plaza below. She saw Omari's figure emerge, followed shortly by Cairo's, two bloodlines, spiraling in opposite directions. Her reflection smiled faintly in the glass. Like pieces on a board, she murmured. She turned back to her desk, lit only by the flickering candle beneath a twisted metal effigy. The serpent, the void, the inheritance was denied to her for years by Vivian's defiance, but now the wheel turned again. She pressed a button on her desk intercom. Begin the next phase. Tonight she'll remember who she belongs to. Vivian exited her office in the Paragon Tower long after the staff had cleared out, the hallways dim and echoing. She clutched her coat and handbag, ready to retreat home, her body and soul aching from the day. But as she stepped into the corridor, a shadow peeled from the wall. Going somewhere, Vivian? Ambrosia's voice was a serpent's purr. Vivian stopped dead. I don't have time for your games, Ambrosia. Oh, but you made time for lies, for betrayal, for theft. Vivian turned slowly to face her. You knew exactly what you were doing today. I did, Ambrosia said, gliding closer. And I must say, watching your carefully curated world shatter was delicious. Vivian narrowed her eyes, anger rising. You're sick, and you're out of time. At Ambrosia's subtle gesture, dark cloaked figures emerged from the shadows of the hall, figures in tailored suits, masks, inked with the serpent insignia, silent and sure. Vivian's body tensed. She reached into her purse, but one of them was already behind her, grabbing her wrist. Another pinned her from the other side. Let me go, she snarled, struggling violently. Ambrosia approached, her face serene, cruel. From her sleeve, she drew a gloved hand, and in it, Vivian's hidden necklace. Vivian froze, realization blooming too late. No, Ambrosia whispered something in the old tongue. The air changed. The serpent pendant began to glow, first softly, then brighter, burning white and gold. Vivian's eyes widened, her body spasmed once, and then she went limp. Ambrosia leaned in close, brushing a hand across Vivian's cheek with mock affection. Welcome back, my dear. Omari stood just beyond the glow of Paragon Tower, its polished glass facade stretching high into the sky behind him like a monument to secrets. The hum of the city felt muffled, distant, as if the world itself had recoiled from what he'd just learned. Vivian, his mother, the word felt foreign in his mouth, familiar, yet fractured. He had always carried a sense of disconnection, adrift in the space between who he was and who he was expected to become. But now that space felt like an open wound, raw, exposed. He should have felt something more than fury, relief, maybe, belonging. But rage was the only thing steady enough to hold on to. She had looked at him like she wanted to explain, like she had been waiting for this moment, but it was too late. Omari pulled out his phone again. No messages, no missed calls. He scrolled to Elijah's name and hovered. His thumb paused. Then, with a quiet sigh, he locked the screen and slipped the phone back into his pocket. Don't lose yourself trying to find where you came from. For the first time, he feared he already was. He didn't remember the walk back to his hotel, only the cold numbness settling into his limbs. Now he stood alone in his suite, framed by the city lights. The skyline stretched like a labyrinth of possibilities he no longer trusted. The walls around him were quiet, too quiet. And in that silence, the past refused to stay buried. Cairo sat on the edge of the fountain just outside the tower, eyes on the water, but mind lost in the revelation. My brother. The words echoed like static. Every time he thought he could make sense of it, a new wave of confusion crushed him. Why hadn't she told him? Why did it feel like everything, his life, his family, had been scripted by someone else? His fingers curled around the stone edge of the fountain. Ambrosia had said they'd talk, but she already knew what this would do. She'd wanted this. Omari's face haunted him, not just the resemblance, but the anger, the betrayal. It echoed something in Cairo he wasn't ready to name. He curled into himself, pulling his knees to his chest. Returning home, the silence of the house was deafening. He didn't cry, but something inside him cracked. Cairo wasn't a child anymore. If they were all lying, it was time he stopped waiting for answers and started demanding them. End of chapter 4. Above and below, secret stirred, and in the cracks between truth and blood, the void waited. Thank you for listening, and welcome to all my new subscribers. Remember to comment, like, share, and subscribe.